Okay, hey everyone. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this video. I gotta be honest with you. I've been having this like every night, thinking about doing this video. I can't sleep at night. I'm trying to go to bed, and this stuff is on here, and I've been debating back and forth whether to do it, whether not to do it. Um, and you know what? Things need to be said. Now, going into this video, let me just say this. Okay, there will be some that will not agree with me. There will be some that will agree with me on some points and not on others. You don't have to agree with me. All I ask is that you can see my heart, and that as I'm trying to do an honest search for what is real and what is true and what the situation is, you can grant me the respect to at least um, hear me out when it comes to the opinions that I'm trying to formulate. I've been looking at things a lot, looking at the Bible a lot, searching my own heart a lot. I talked yesterday with a good friend of mine who's actually a pastor of a church down in Compton and has grown up in that area all of his life. I wanted to get his insight on some of these things. And, we won't necessarily completely agree, but I'm hoping that maybe some of the things that I say might be helpful to someone, and if not, let's just choose to disagree and love each other anyways. Okay? Fair enough? So, starting off, I want to talk about what it is that everyone can agree upon. Okay? Because it's best to start with common ground, wouldn't you say? So, we see a video of a man being suffocated with a knee on his neck and officers standing by and complicit. I would tell you that I think that we are pretty much in agreement almost universally that that was a murderous and completely unnecessary act taking place right before our eyes there on video. I would say that 98% at least of the people that I know or that I've had contact with would have no disagreement on that. A horrific, inexcusable, no justification whatsoever murderous act. I think that my opinion would be that the officer, especially, if not all of them, obviously should have consequences, but especially the one who had the knee on should spend the rest of his life in prison. That would be my take on that. Now, if you don't agree on that, I don't know how you come to that conclusion, because it looked pretty deliberate and it was just plain sick. So I think we can agree on that. So right now there's a lot of protests and everything going around the country. So the question is, what is the purpose of those protests? And the purpose of those protests, as I understand it, is to draw attention to the fact that these type of things take place. And so I think peaceful protests are a right that people have in the United States to do that, and peaceful protests are definitely protected by freedom of speech, and absolutely nothing wrong with it. People should understand that that took place. People should understand that that's totally unacceptable. So I think we can agree on that point, okay? But now the question comes in as to, now that we agree on a point, what happens from here? I mean, people are protesting, people are yelling, people are screaming. We have agreement on the wrong atrocity of this. So now what's done about it? What is done about it? I mean, part of the protest is for the officers to be prosecuted and taken care of. That's in the works right now. That would be justice, so that's good. But then what's done about it beyond that point? Okay? So then you come to this area that I've thought about for a long time. And it's something that's being brought up right now, and it's called a term called systemic racism. Okay, now let me try to explain my understanding, at least, of what systemic racism is. It is a system that is designed to purposely show prejudice against a certain class of people or a certain race of people. Now, I've said this on previous posts. I believe biblically that there's only one true race, and that is the human race. I don't care whether your skin is white or black or brown or yellow or red or anywhere in between. I believe that we're all created by God and have equal value before God, and we all need to see that. God sees us all as very, very important, not one over the other. To me, skin color is nothing other than a trait, like eye color, hair color, you name it. That's all it is. So, but that's not how everybody views it, obviously. So the idea of systemic racism is that the system is rigged, in a sense. The system is set up to keep certain people down and to keep certain people, quote unquote, in their place. Now, the question is, does that really exist? And, I've thought about this for a long time. Throughout my life, I've had people that have talked to me about racism. And there's been times in my life, one of the things that always bothers me is when I'll say something and me, I know my heart. I know that I value all people. I know that I care about all people. I think about some of the friends that I have who are considered, African American, and I think about if that were to happen to them, absolutely, it just sends chills down me to think about that because I love and care about them so much. They're my friends, and they're special. It's just like anyone else. They're not. Nobody's different than anyone else. All people to me are special. So it's like when the times have come when suddenly I'm supposed to feel somewhat now responsible for what happened at that awful crime on the video, it hurts me as well because I think to myself, I don't agree with that. I would never condone that. I would never say that that's okay. I would never even think of wanting to do anything like that. So how does this suddenly become my fault? And it becomes aggravating when we see this thing over and over again. And as I think about the fact that I get tired of feeling like I need to apologize for views that I don't hold and for actions that I don't take, then I have to think about those who have been victim of that type of discrimination or prejudice and think if I feel this way, how must they feel when they've been victim of that particular thing? And so I need to have what we call what? Empathy. And what is empathy? That's a word that's going around right now. What is empathy? Empathy is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and feel the things that they feel. Now, we can only do that to a degree if we don't share the experience, obviously. But I believe that each one of us needs to make the effort to do that. So now back to the idea of systemic racism. What does that mean? That means that the system is set up to keep certain people unempowered and to keep certain people down. Does that happen? And I'm going to tell you something right now that some people are going to go, yes, he said it, and some people are going to go, no, I don't agree, and that's fine, but just hear me out, okay? Because I've really tried to think through this, talk with some people from various perspectives. I believe that to a degree, it does happen. It does happen. Now, do I believe that you are locked into the system and cannot get out of that? No, I believe there are opportunities to do that. But is there such a thing as systemic racism? And not just for people that are African American. It happens to a lot of people of various different socio and economic backgrounds. And I believe that the answer to that is yes. And I want to give you some examples, really, of what I'm thinking of. For instance, for the longest time, there's been a huge drug problem in this country. Okay? The drugs, we know where they come from. We know how they get across. We know the sources of them. And you have to ask yourself, the politicians that you support, the people that you're backing, the people that say that they're fighting for you, are they fighting to keep those drugs out of the country, out of the neighborhoods, out of the communities, so that people are not lost in drug use and those type of things, or are they letting it through? Do we really think that they can't take actions knowing where a lot of the drugs come from to prevent these things from happening? Okay? In the Bible, do we know that the word pharmacy comes from the original word pharmakia, which actually has to do with witchcraft, sorcery. That's where it comes from. Okay? Mind altering drugs is biblically a demonic type of thing. Okay? And yet it's flooding into neighborhoods all across the country, and especially into what's considered the cities and a lot of the places that we've seen a lot of the pain that we're dealing with and looking at right now. Okay? What about the breakdown of the family unit and stripping of that, and laws in the past that purposely, seemingly, broke down the family unit, took fathers out of homes, didn't make efforts to put fathers back into homes? This is all a very serious problem when the family unit and the father influence is not there. Okay? This would be true no matter what the color of a skin of a person is. We're seeing this across the nation where there's not a fatherly influence, there is a problem. Okay? Other areas, such as abortion, which is often disguised as a woman's right to choose, it is a racket. Okay? And out of the 4,000 abortions that occur in the United States every single day, do we know that at least 25% of that comes from the African American community? It's very much set up. Planned Parenthood, if you look back at the history of Planned Parenthood, has very much targeted that. And what do they do with that, by the way? I know I'm getting political right here, but what is it that they do with that? They use the fetal material and stuff. It's been proven. They use it for experimental, they use it in products, they use it for testings, they do it for all types of things. And this is being very, very much encouraged. That's not what needs to be taking place. All right? And so many things that have happened in these communities, like we're seeing even right now. Okay? There are so many sincere people who are out there and are protesting, and it's their perfect right to do so, and it's completely understandable. I 100% support that. But what's going on with what is seemingly, obviously, an organized crime circuit, and in many of the cases they're finding that 80 to 90% of the people that are doing the rioting, that are actually destroying the neighborhoods, are not people that live in those neighborhoods. And what neighborhoods have they been going into? They've gone into the cities. They've gone into the places where people are trying to make a living, trying to better themselves, and they're destroying them. You got to think, wait a minute, what is going on here? There is a system that is continuing to keep those neighborhoods, that is continuing to keep people down and make them dependent, burning down the businesses. We've had all this COVID-19 shutdowns, lockdowns, you name it, making people dependent on the government. Let me explain something to you on how things work. I think we all know this. Okay? If you are dependent on me to eat, if you are dependent on me for your finances, if you are dependent on me to live, then that gives me control. If you need me to do the things that you need in life, then in order to have those things provided for you, if you need me, then now I get to tell you what to do and what not to do, because you're dependent on that. If I want to help you, I don't help you by feeding you. I help you by teaching you how to feed yourself. Okay? That's something that's a very important distinction. All right? And many of the policies and everything in our system are designed to make people dependent when they are perfectly intelligent and perfectly able and consistent. And what we should be doing is training people, educating people, giving people opportunities to excel themselves and not be dependent. So, we have a system that seems to perpetuate this problem, right? And I would agree with this. So now the question is, what do you do about systemic racism? Okay? If a system is designed and is implemented and works together to create a certain outcome, then the only way to change the outcome is to change some of the systemic problems, the systemic processes which lead to that outcome. Is that correct or is that not correct? All right. So in order to do that, then obviously you have to take a look at who perpetuates that system. Okay? And you need to think that something in the thought process and the decision making of those who are leading that system need to make changes so that the result of the systemic process will be different. Are you following me? Okay. Now, how does this finally end itself up? Which is, this now is turning into a very long video, and some of you may have already checked out on me. Okay, so how does this end up changing? All right? And that is that you have to take a look then at the leadership that is perpetuating that system. Now, why would they change and why would they not change? Okay, systemic problems in leadership have been true throughout history, and it's all about power. You got to understand that. It is all about power. Even back to the time of Jesus himself. Granted, he came to be the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. He knew that he was going to be taken. He knew that he was going to voluntarily allow himself to be put on the cross so he could die for our sins. That's a whole other issue. But taking the spiritual issue out of it and putting it just in the worldly issue of what happened, the reason that Jesus was taken to the cross was systemic. Okay? And that was that because leaders in power who were supposed to be for the people took a look at the following that Jesus was getting and said, we need to do something about it. Doesn't matter whether it's from God, doesn't matter whether what he's saying is better for the people or not. We need to do something about it, because if we don't, our place of power will be taken away. And so that's why they enacted and they arrested him and they went to crucify Jesus. Okay? Whenever the system is threatened to change, whenever the system is threatened that the people in charge will lose their influence, will lose their power, drastic measures are taken. And we've seen it with this COVID-19 lockdowns, and now we're seeing it with these organized riots that are taking place and taking away from the true right of people to lawfully protest. Okay? People are taking advantage of the situation and destroying the very neighborhoods that need to be getting built up. All right? So, in other words, what I would tell you is, who's to blame? Okay? And you can decide who it is that you want to blame. A lot of people want to blame Donald Trump. Okay? And, well, he is the President of the United States, so I can understand why a lot of people would want to blame Donald Trump. Okay? Some people really like Donald Trump, and some people really despise Donald Trump. And I'm not going to give you an opinion right now. But I want to tell you that whether you really love him or whether you really despise him, this problem goes back way more than the last 4 or 5 years that he's been on the scene. So there's no way that you can blame all of systemic racism on Donald Trump. It goes back way further. So you got to look in the areas where these problems occur. You got to look in the areas in these cities and these different places and see what leadership has been in place, see what policies have been in place that have contributed and have maintained this system the entire time. And you have to say to yourself, it's been 30, 40, 50, 60 years with all of this going on. Obviously something is not working and there needs to be a change. We can protest all we want, and rightfully so. We can say all kinds of things all we want. We can be mad, we can be angry, and rightfully so. But until the system changes, and that requires people to vote in changes, okay? Until you understand who it is that's oppressing you, until you understand what system issues need to change and put the right people in charge to do that, the system will not change. Nothing's going to change. So I would encourage you, in this year, when all these messages and propaganda are being thrown at you from all types of different directions, ask yourself, who's really your friend? Who's really fighting for me? Not what they're telling me, but what have they done? What are they responsible for the current system or not? And if they are and have done nothing to change it, then maybe they're lying to me. Maybe they're manipulating me, and maybe they're taking advantage of me. And maybe it's time to wake up and say there needs to be a true change to the system and not just fall into the rhetoric and the propaganda that they're telling you. Just a thought, okay? Some of you now say thank you for saying it, and some of you are ticked off. I love everybody, and so I hope that heart comes across. It's just my opinion, and I'm not an authority, but it's been bugging me for days, so I just wanted to share it. Share with me your thoughts, please, politely, respectfully. I'll have respect for you as well, even if you disagree. Thank you so much, and take care.